Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Cause Before Symptom, a joint episode of Cause Before Symptom and Urban Odyssey. It is the 28th of August already, guys. This month, this year has gone by so fast. This will be, what, almost 2 years, because it's coming up on Labor Day weekend, which is when Carner usually goes to the concert. He did tell me he's not going this year because of whatever he's doing now. I think he's out mining now, but he had some scheduling thing that he didn't go to the concert this year, but he'll be back in a couple of days, probably early next week, I'm guessing. So yeah, he's out looking for gold. It is a pastime that he seems to enjoy a lot. So I think it's really cool. You don't really get to talk to people who do that, at least not around here. It's not something you do much around here. I've seen people try to do it around Ohio, which is where I'm from, but you know, it's not really the best around here. So last night we did the video on blood and the connection between plasma and breath and how that relates to the state of matter plasma, but also blood plasma. So and I think people seem to find that interesting. I've gotten some good feedback already just in the day. It's only been a day since that went up. And I know it does take people a bit of time to make it through these episodes, especially if they're on a serious subject or they're, you know, big or beefy or something like that. And going forward, one of the things that I am trying to do just while in my pursuit of making content, I'm going to try to do videos that are concentrated as much as possible on one subject, because I don't want to try and mix things and try to introduce one concept and another concept. So one thing I'm trying to do, mostly behind the scenes, just as I plan out things to present or as I present them, I'm trying to be more well-rounded and concise and whatnot. So tonight, speaking of, we do have a really interesting show. This was a book that was recommended on Sabrina Wallace, the Synergy podcast. She had mentioned the book called Mirror Worlds. So let me go ahead and make myself a bit smaller. Mirror Worlds. And then the subtitle of this book, or The Day Software Puts the Universe in a Shoebox, How It Will Happen and What It Will Mean. And this book came out in 1992, which is very interesting. Because if you watched the reflexivity video that I did, I also did the predictive 6G predictive modeling and the matrix and LE world model video. And again, going back and looking at those, I realized that I want to shorten that a bit. I want to try and get that more bite-sized, I guess you could say. I want to try to break things down in such a way that they can go back and people can reference them in the future. And if they need something on a specific subject, they can find it. And then anything that's related to that subject will be linked in the post. That's one of the things that I like to do as much as possible. So let's see. Make sure everything's good to go here. I think we're good to go. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to get through just a bit of stuff at the beginning here. We're not going to go through all of it in depth, but some of it I will let you guys pause and read if you wish to. If not, you don't have to. But to get us started, the book published in 1991, Mirror Worlds by David Gelernter. I guess that's how you say his last name. The text introduces the concept of mirror worlds, which are sophisticated software models designed to track and mimic large-scale physical institutions or cities in real time, rather than acting as mere databases. These digital environments function as dynamic microcosms that allow citizens to gaze into the complex systems surrounding them, effectively stuffing a massive organization into a genie bottle on a desk. The author argues that we are currently, as of 1991, currently in a period similar to 1791, standing on the precipice of a true software revolution, where programs evolve from superficial decorations into the fundamental building materials of society. And I just can't help but think it's so true. It's exactly what happened. It's almost like they know. Catch a drink real quick. Let me make sure my chat's working, because seems like we have some people trying to chat and it's not coming through. So let me get all that reset real quick. Sometimes it works fine, sometimes it doesn't. So one moment, bear with me. We're good, we're good, we're good. Okay. I'm working on it. Let's see. Okay. Let me refresh it on OBS, the end of OBS. Okay, let's see if somebody wants to try to send a chat through and see if how well it works. My apologies. I do usually it works fine. Tonight is one of the nights that it decides to malfunction. Okay, back to this. So ultimately, the work serves to explain how these information refineries will move beyond the electronic brain metaphor to become essential thought tools for navigating and mastering an increasingly complicated man-made world. Okay, so I think there we go. I promise it's just bugging out on me. I do see your messages. I know you're there. Let's see. How's it going, Boots? I think that was tonight. Boots says, how's it going? There we go. I think everything's good. Seriously, it's just, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. So now chat is on. If people send messages, it'll pop up in a little bubble. There we go. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everybody who's here. Sometimes I try to get all this, I promise I try to get this stuff sorted out before I even start. And without people being in the chat, before the stream starts, I can't really test it. But when I start and I get everything rolling and I play the intro usually runs about 2 minutes, and that gives me a moment to double check that everything's up on all the platforms, that everything's good to go, make sure there's no malfunctions, get it all out of the way. So that's usually why I play a short intro for streams. Yeah, so okay. Gotcha, Argertison. Nice to see you tonight. So, okay, the reason that this is a interesting text, and the reason that I decided to cover it, is because we have already talked about predictive markets, and you guys might not have seen it because there's a video on my channel. It wasn't talk about, let's see, talk about the script. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're actually going through some of the texts that go into building the script for this. And so what I do is I put all of the books together, take all of the books, and I put about 100 of them together. Magnetism, I put, obviously this one I put, let's see what the other ones that I got on here are. We'll go down to these. This is one that I want to cover in a whole other episode. So this is actually by a Kabbalist rabbi, and it's titled Nanotechnology of Mind Over Matter. And this is really interesting because I really have never seen any type of mystic, Kabbalist, anything about technology. It's usually outdated stuff, stuff from 100 years ago or even longer. And this one is newer. I see the YouTube chat. That's you right there. AI appreciator. But I mean, I always appreciate anybody's comments, so I do read them. Okay. I'll read here. In the book by the Kabbalist Rabbi Philip Berg, the book is titled Nanotechnology of Mind Over Matter. Kabbalist Rav Berg explores the profound intersection between the modern science of nanotechnology and the ancient spiritual wisdom found in the Zohar. The text suggests that as human consciousness evolves, scientific breakthroughs naturally mirror deep-seated metaphysical truths, particularly the concept that mind over matter can lead to total physical rejuvenation and biological immortality, which is very interesting. So, and everything, as you said, tech is based off of the human form. So when you get into people like Nick Land, he's a big name. If people don't know who Nick Land is, he's associated with the Cybernetics Culture Research Unit. And then you have, he influenced greatly people like Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, and a few others. But their idea is that the human body is a limiting factor. And so when they talk about Christianity, you know how he's all obsessed with the Antichrist or whatever. When they talk about Christianity, what their idea of it is that they have to surpass the limits of the human body. And this is what the whole dark enlightenment accelerationism is really about. And here's the proof. It's in this right here. We're looking at a Kabbalist Rabbi, and he's written a few other books. Some of his other books are really interesting, and I think he knows more than he lets on. But he's sitting here writing about nanotechnology, and he mentions biological immortality. It's absolutely a big driving factor of this. It says, through a personal foreword by Yehuda Berg, which is related to the author, a family member or something, the work is framed not just as a theoretical guide, but as a lived testimony of the author's own battle with illness, illustrating the spiritual technology required to overcome the limitations of the physical body. Ultimately, the book serves as a blueprint for redemption, aiming to simplify complex celestial secrets so that humanity can finally eliminate chaos and death from the world. So, and then this is the foreword, or it's not a foreword, but it's right there on the cover. So if anybody wants to pause and read, you're more than welcome to do that. Another one, let's see. We got Synergy in the chat. Nice to have you with us. Every religion covers up for the dynamic blood flow interactions with biophysics and call it a different terminology. Absolutely. And then this is the tried and true method that they use, is that they just reinvent the words. It's just a, you know, they're throwing down booby traps. It's like the old Mario Kart racing games. You know, you can get the power-ups, and the power-ups, you hit a button and it'll drop it for somebody behind you, and you try to trip them up. And that's what they're doing when they change the words, is they just change the words and immediately. So this is another one by the same author. I'm not going to read through it, but if you guys would like to, I'll read through a few portions of it. This is called Time Zones. He calls it creating order out of chaos. And we get back to this idea when we talk about retrocausality and mirror worlds and surrogate models and cognitive twins and digital twins. What's the difference? So a surrogate model generally is for something, any type of system. It doesn't have to be a person or entity. But after that, sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was reading the chat. It doesn't have to be, sorry, it'll come back to me in a minute. So this is about using all of this technology to go back and alter the past, as they call it. They call it retrocausality, and they call it past token prediction. So past token prediction is something that pertains to AI, and I'm going to show the graph of that right now, actually, because that's going to factor into what we're comparing: surrogate models and digital twins. That's what I was saying. A surrogate model can be any system, or could be a neighborhood, it could be a government program, it could be a business model, it could be anything. But a digital twin or a cognitive twin generally might apply to a human. You could argue maybe a corporation as an entity, and it could have a digital twin too, but okay. Prior token or previous token prediction and long context diffusion. And all of this ties into time travel, quote unquote time travel, and creating what they call order out of chaos. So I've got all kinds of books here, but I'm not going to be able to get through all of them in one show. What I did want to get into, though, is this right here, what we're talking about, retrocausality. This is straight out of the paper. It talks about next token prediction, which is basically going forward, inversion, previous token prediction going backwards. Okay, so let me switch my screen here to the graph, and we will walk through it, and I will try to explain it in the simplest way manner. It's not simple, so don't try to grasp it in one go. Okay. So what is time travel? I see your comment, but if I was to sit here and I was to go back and forth with as fast as everybody's going, I wouldn't be able to actually present the material. So I see your comment, but you know, I can't keep up with everything you're talking about. So phase 1, forward propagation. Forward propagation is what it says, going forward. We're starting here at the top, the present biological state. T0 means time right now, starting point time. So that's, you know, the person or whatever is being monitored. Okay, telemetry is ingested at the starting point via real-time wideband wireless body area network and integrated sensing and communication, ISAC, carrier feeds, forward wave propagation. Yes, that's true. Here, I'll take the chat off for just a moment, but guys, I will get back to it. Don't worry. Let's go ahead and make this full screen so that everybody could see it. There we go. Okay, so from there, the raw telemetry in at the starting point, spatiotemporal channel, physical propagation, environment, ORAN. Now this is the ORAN is the Open Radio Access Network, Radio Intelligent Controller, or RAN Intelligent Controller. Now, we did the video on predictive markets, and when we talked about predictive markets, the same type of simulation, they're called logarithmic market scoring rules, logarithmic market scoring rules. And logarithmic market scoring rules allow them to simulate a market. They don't have to use real money, and they can simulate it using a mathematical function. Okay, that is the same way that they're implementing different hardware, different types of hardware, and making it able to work together. So if one company has proprietary hardware and another company has, excuse me, proprietary hardware, the ORAN, Radio Intelligent Controller routing schedules, allow it to talk to each other. And it uses a very similar type of algorithm to the market scoring rules. Okay, so from the telemetry in at the starting point, it uses next token prediction, going forward, predicting the projected future state, T future, meaning at some future time. Okay, multi-step NTP rollouts, predicted behavioral trajectory. 1, feeds the projected state into the terminal layer here. Up here you have a target compliance baseline. So this would be your constraints or something that, you know, this is what we need the person to do. Okay, here's what, from over here, their measurements right now, here's what we need them to look like. It goes into the terminal layer, subtracts the projected state, the future state, from the target, calculates a global error vector, terminal error vector. From there, uses something called recursive gradient descent, and I do have a visual for that. A recursive gradient or recursive gradient estimator is an optimization technique that updates gradient approximation step by step using previous estimates and new mini batch differences. And a gradient is type of calculus. I mean, it uses optimization techniques, and what you're doing is you're trying to figure out how to get to a minima or a maxima. This is a term called a gradient. In higher dimensions, at least when you're dealing with, as in the synergy video that we were talking in the other night, you were talking about how the math is very important and how it's in perhaps 1,290 dimensions, as in the Matrix AI paper or whatever. The schema has 1,290 fields. And so if you're going to do optimization in that many dimensions, you would have something called a gradient. Okay. So back over here, let's see, recursive gradient, meaning going backwards. And what it's going to do is it's going to calculate that gradient based on your error vector. So let me recap. It's going to project what your future state will be. It'll pull some measurements right now, and it's going to say, here's what you're going to do in the future. Maybe here's where you would have gone wrong in the future. That's the error. Where you would have gone wrong in the future. Okay, and then it's going to step backwards, and it's going to do that based on the error vector that it calculated. Resolving chain rule weights. The chain rule is another term from calculus. This is where previous token prediction comes in. So it goes back, and every single time that it steps back and looks at where did you go wrong in the past, going back in time now, recursive gradient back in time. Where did you go wrong? And it's trying to do this at, the idea is to make the differential in time almost zero. So you want to keep calculating these error differentials, maybe a second apart, 10 milliseconds apart, 100 milliseconds apart, something like that. Okay, but then once it calculates those, it's going to use previous token prediction. And from that, it basically says, given some result, tell me the prompt. What was the prompt that got this result? So from that, it will calculate a pre-image. Okay, from there, step 5, it injects these calculated, basically the prompts that would, in the past, have corrected the errors that it thinks you're going to do. And I don't think I'll be able to say that again. Okay, let me try. It injects prompts for how to fix the errors in a previous retrospective time frame of something that it thinks you're going to do in the future. Okay, phase 3, this is the reverse diffusion layer. So we've got one more thing. And guys, again, it's okay if you guys don't get all of this at once, because this is fucking complicated. This is really, really advanced, but they're spending billions and billions of dollars to go and research it. So, okay, from there, step 5, and it injects these previous token predicted prompts that would cure the past errors that it thinks you're going to make. Feeds that into a physical actuator interface. Now, these might look different depending on the environment. This is where they can get very crafty now. They can customize meta-atoms, meta-surface, meta-molecules. They can customize basically the physics. It's a programmable environment where they can customize the physics. They can customize how light reflects or how it doesn't. They can dial it all in. It's very interesting. MOSA and SOSA, the modular open systems approach, that's one. So, okay, from there, step 6, it deploys an optimized phase, meaning what it does is it tries to implement a solution for these error correcting predicted prompts. Tries to correct you in real time, in other words. So it's trying to do this as fast as possible. That's what the whole predictive market math radio controller thing is about, is that it really is running a simulation to get the cognitive twin, the 6G digital twin, whatever you want to call it. It's trying to update that within about 10 to 100 milliseconds, probably closer to 10. I mean, they got to do this very fast. And they can do it with the market simulations. The same idea of market consensus can be used to route information. Okay, so it's feeding in error corrections in real time. ambient space. So this is just the ambient environment. Why do you have to have a high chaos environment? It's because they really need to, I don't know, I guess it's like you're shaking up the, you're shaking up the bag to try and get things moving fast so that you can shape it in real time. It's hard to give an analogy. So the background, high entropy biological variances, uncollapsed quantum states of other targets or the target themselves via acoustic or somatic noise that feeds in along with all of these correct, optimized error corrections into the reverse diffusion. So think of how when you generate an image with AI, it starts as like this static chaos and it turns into an image. So it basically is kind of doing that in a person's environment, whatever environment they're in, is it will take the background chaos of that environment and it will use reverse diffusion to denoise it. Iterative denoising steps, retrocausal, that's where we get the term retrocausal, entropy inversion. Step 7, denoise and flatten the curve, flatten the timeline. Temporal latency straightening is what they call it. It's a biological behavior realignment. Linearized compliance matrix. Going back, step 8, this just is where it becomes a feedback loop because it goes right back to the beginning. And that is it. Let's see. Okay, let me catch up with everybody real quick. Take a drink as well. The CEO of A&T, I'm not sure what A&T is. Maybe I'm just drawing a blank right now, but whatever A&T means, you can let me know. And maybe, okay, let's see. Boots, Philip, how's it going? Nice to see you. I don't know if I said hi to you yet, Philip. Let's see. Love the info, but you can tell that this is, tell what this is. I mean, you can call, I don't know what the term means, but whatever. So, okay. Guys, I promise it's okay if you didn't understand that, but okay, Anthropic, he said Anthropic. He said Anthropic CEO is using forward prediction. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most commonly used things, technologies in AI. Anybody who's ever generated an image with AI has used it. Reverse diffusion. Synergy says compliance matrix is generic or genetic engineering for catching errors and improving energy consumption. Absolutely correct. And this is not just happening to individual nodes on the network. This is also the network correcting itself in real time, which is what Synergy is talking about. I will do that. I will absolutely do that. Okay, so the reason I showed this to you, one, because I would like to go back and do this as much as I need to, because people need to understand this a little bit. But this Mirror Worlds book predicted this literally. Well, I know that. I said this is a popular technology that anybody who's ever generated an image has used a reverse diffusion technology or process. That's what I meant, not the CEO. Okay, so we're going to revisit that in the future, but the Mirror Worlds book has predicted this in 1991 or 1992. So let's go back to the presentation. Let's get that started. Okay. The Panopticon. This is from the Devil's Dictionary by Anab Whitehouse. In an essay on the topic, Jeremy Bentham argued that the best form of a prison would be one in which a prisoner cells would be open to a central tower in which prisoners could not see, and therefore the prisoners would never know whether or not the tower was being occupied with people who were observing the prisoners, and in addition, prisoners would not be permitted to interact with one another. Bentham considered the Panopticon to be an ideal template for how society in general ought to work. Okay, Gelernter's book was an architectural specification for a complete technological inversion. It wasn't the only one. He defined a mirror world as a three-dimensional real-time software model of some chunk of reality or something. You're modeling something. Some piece of the real world going on outside your window. Inbound deluge. The software model is continuously fed by oceans of information, like wood to a fire, coal to a fire, whatever. Information feeds this model as much as possible, and you want to do it in true calculus fashion. What you do is you try to make your difference in time as small as possible, infinitely small. So instead of how fast were you going over 5 minutes, you say how fast were you going over 2 minutes? Okay, how fast were you going over 1 minute? How fast were you going over half a minute? How fast were you going over 1 second? That's the idea. So you want to try to take your measurements almost instantaneously. That's what they mean by zero latency. So it's fed oceans of information endlessly into this model through a vast maze of software pipes and hoses so that it can mimic the reality's every move, moment by moment. The interface geometry, the user navigates the world using a physical computer, again, 1991, equipped with a perspective shifter to toggle between geographic personnel and financial viewpoints. A diving mouse, that's what he called it, a diving mouse to plunge through nested layers of metadata, a history key to roll the archive backwards through time, and an experience key, which triggers a simulated mind machine to locate precedents, patterns, across millions of stored cases. Gelernter organized the mirror world as an impossible structure of spaces within spaces, called a recursive free-form dollhouse. These are his terms that are used in the book. Built out of nested, endlessly stretchable envelopes, the dollhouse allows users to stroll around, run ad hoc queries, and deploy software agents, these being independent info machines, to snoop on decision-making, monitor clinical safety in hospitals, and watch for institutional failure. It's a big thing. Watch for institutional failure. Top sight. This is a term that he defines in the book, top sight. The ultimate spiritual and practical reward of the mirror world was top sight. What this means is to basically see things before they happen. The human scale social world equivalent of a telescope, giving the user the ability to see the whole thing at once. Gelernter promised that a bottled institution cannot intimidate, confound, or ignore its members. They dominate it. The citizen, in his eyes, back in 1991, the citizen would hold the quote-unquote new orb of kingship, carrying whole organizational worlds in the palm of their hand. We'll get the graphic first. Okay, so the coordination language called Lynda in the book. An entire ensemble is glued together using Lynda. Instead of sequential coding, Lynda uses a tuple space. Anybody who has done any type of programming has probably heard of a tuple. I don't have an exact definition, but the way that I would define it is that a tuple is maybe you can store 2 numbers, maybe you can store 3, maybe you can store different variables depending on the language, but it's just something in more than one dimension. So maybe a vector x and y, you could say that would be a tuple. Lynda uses a tuple space or a tuple sphere. where persistent passive data objects called tuples drift placidly in space and time until active, independent worker info machines grab, read, or modify them. The completely uncoupled architecture allows thousands of programs to chatter and execute simultaneously on parallel hypercomputers. Trellis distillery located in the Mirror World's basement, a Trellis program which connects real-time data streams. In the show that I did on another book called Haunted Technology, I know I need to move myself over. My apologies. In the show that I did on Haunted Technology, they compared it to a switchboard. And this analogy continuously gets made to an old telephone switchboard. And I know that a lot of people don't know what a telephone switchboard is. Back in the day, they used to plug people's phone calls in. You would pick up the phone and there would be somebody who had a job to connect phone calls, and they would literally plug it in. And this is what interestingly enough, I've talked about it a few times, but we'll do it for old time's sake. This is literally what a packet capturing software does, like the Verizon Moloch conference. We know that they've rebranded it now, but it is a large-scale, open-sourced, indexed packet capture and search system. It's been renamed to Archime now. But this is basically a switchboard for information. So this idea of a Trellis program, as low-level data pours into the bottom of the layered network, it is systematically processed by data refineries. This is a very vague term. Again, there's a lot of ways you can refine data broadly. Pass through different data refineries and passed upwards, bringing the big picture into focus on top. This also could be thought of as compartmentalization on a very large scale. The FGP machine. When the experience key is pressed, the system runs an FGP machine, which is a fetch, generalize, and project. Everything we just covered in the flow chart that we walked through at the beginning, all of that is based pretty much on fetching the current state through telemetry, generalizing it backwards and then forwards and then backwards and then forwards, enough to spin you around a few times. And then it doesn't project, it does project forward, but then it projects the error backwards. So this is an FGP machine on crack, pretty much. It pulls relevant precedents from the database. It uses a special form of forgetfulness called perma-squishing, which blurs older distinctions to save storage space to automatically extract abstract rules, make predictions, and speculate on upcoming outcomes. Again, everything that I showed you in the chart that we just went over. So here's a little diagram of Lynda, and this is very much identical to what we've covered in the episodes on telemetry. Starting at the top, real-world data feeds, sensors, CCTV cameras, again, 1991. The basement, this is where everything gets shifted around and refined and escalated, only the most important and viable data to the top. The middle, this is the coaxial agent space. Now, coaxial is an interesting term because that pops up in Ken Wheeler's book where he talks about the ether. Literally, he calls the ether the coaxial pulse center, the z-axis of the EM propagation wave. He says it doesn't move through time or space-time. It actually moves through the ether. That's the medium. So, interesting, this term coaxial. Coaxial agent space. Blurred. Is it real? Is it not real? I don't know. These being persistent tuples. Tuples, again, multivariable object. And independent Lynda agents. This is some type of coordinated language. It calls in the book this language Lynda, but today it may go by other names. Okay, finally, the attic, the top. This is the history presses. FGP machine, the fetch generalized project machine, perma squishing, I guess maybe compressing data past precedents. Let's see. How's it going? Philip, how's it going, everybody? On Substack, the Ether is the plenum. It's a compliance tool. And it is a compliance tool, absolutely. Let's see, NST3, yaw, pitch, and roll of molecules. GPS, PNT, position, navigation, and timing. I can't believe I've never heard that of PNT before. Position, navigation, and timing. That's crazy. Okay. Thank you for that. Position, navigation, and timing. And these can be expressed for all of these different objects. And that's the idea, as you're linking different objects and different systems in different states on a small scale, and then performing data operations on that small scale, and then doing this on a bunch of different areas, and then bringing it all together and doing it once more on the larger scale. So, okay, now the last slide was, what does the book talk about? This slide is, how does it compare to reality? David Gelernter's vision of the mirror world as a liberating, democratic public square has been utterly shattered by the realities of the 21st century. The difference of 3 decades has transformed his instrument for citizens into a Metatronic architecture of absolute surveillance and corporate profit. Let's see. PNTs are update to GPS to include SOSA quantum sensing and the Z-axis with plasma pinching. Yes, absolutely. I've seen plasma pinching pop up quite a bit. Absolutely. Philip says our institutions have failed us many years ago. That they have, unfortunately. And that's where things start to get dark, is it's because, you know, there's this weird, okay, I'll sum it up very simply. I don't remember who said the quote, but none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe themselves to be free. And that's where it gets very scary. It's because there's this weird haunting effect when you get into that type of thing. Let's see. Let me move myself over and get back to it. Okay, yeah, so let's move on. The corporate digital twin enclosure. Gelernter's open public mirror worlds do not exist. Instead, technology has mutated into proprietary corporate digital and cognitive twins in smart cities, which were actually perfected in Vietnam, like Singapore, virtual Singapore, Helsinki, and Shanghai. Digital twins, DBTs, are used as central command centers to continuously ingest data from traffic cameras, smart streetlights, body sensor data from people all over. Even if you just walk past somebody else who's got a device, it can pick up passive data from somebody who doesn't even have a device if they walk past it. Let's see. Public transit, GPS, and, as you said, PNT, position, navigation, and timing, and environmental Internet of Things. There's a bunch of different types of internets of nano things, space things, bio nano things, blah, 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 blah things. Okay, these are not beer halls for citizens like the guy in the book. He had a positive, maybe a bit of a ridiculously high hopes, but he thought it would be cheery, but it's not. So citizens aren't monitoring the state. They actually, obviously, who could have told you? Orwell told us they're governmental levers. It's a panopticon used to organize and optimize municipal efficiency by 30%. That's what they say. And enforce centralized top-down scenario control, storyline control. That's a good thing to check out. medicalization of data. Gelernter's hospital mirror world has been realized as precision oncology, digital twins, and gene editing too, such as Farsight, the twin in Conquer, I think. That's how you say that. C-O-N-C-R, Conquer. These systems integrate genomic sequencing. Now, this is where it gets important. Genomic data. They even have a standardized sequence for it. I don't know if you saw the show last night, Synergy, but we talked about the Phenopacket very briefly. Let me get the image back up so that everybody can see it. Because this is really the end. This is the end stage as far as I'm concerned. It's the genomic data, because you can't change your genes. I mean, past that point, I don't really know what else you could say, but that's a good thing that you can't ever change, is your genes and your genomic data. Okay, let me bring this up. Again, I'll have to cover this more in depth in a different show, which I would like to do. But just for the time being, here's what a Phenopacket is. Essentially, a packet of information, as we've covered, which the packet capture software captures and analyzes packets. Okay, this is a packet, but for genomic data. So here's the color table here. And it has all kinds of different things. So that, again, that'll be something we're going to cover in another episode. Okay, let me see. Yes, these systems integrate genomic sequencing, biomarker trends, and wearable sensor streams. Now, remember this, the second that you're outside and you breathe in just a little bit of smart dust, it's not smart dust anymore, it's a wearable medical device. And so when they're talking about, oh, wow, the guy who runs the Department of Health just hired a bunch of people to be the Surgeon General, they have wearable technology they run wearable medical technology companies, and that's what they mean. They don't just mean a Fitbit. They mean the second it touches you, it's a wearable device. You're wearing it, and it's just for medical applications. Palantir Ontology harnesses EHR Phenopackets, for example. Absolutely. Okay, and so once it takes this data in, remember the diagram we looked at the very beginning. It runs what if therapeutic, again, this is their language, they call it a therapeutic simulation for healthcare reasons, but it's therapeutic if you're like the worst type of person in the world. It's therapeutic for evil people. That's their idea of therapeutic. These twins remain highly siloed, meaning compartmentalized, corporate controlled, and disconnected from public oversight, used by pharmaceutical cartels to optimize patient drug dosages rather than empowering patients to dominate the health or the hospital bureaucracy. Algorithmic golems. Gelernter's optimistic forecast of Turingware being smooth mixed marriages where human and software work hand in glove has devolved into absolute dependency on the silicon golem, the AI overlord that can tell them the answer. Because even in the words of Sam Altman, he said, you know what? We actually don't know how to get to be profitable. So we're going to build a machine and it will tell us how to get profitable. That's what the dependency on it is. And if you really want to know why things are so weird now, I think a lot of it boils down to this. Like, I think a fair guess as to what went wrong, you know, there are some uses for surrogate models, or some uses for digital twins. I mean, obviously, if you're building a roller coaster, you can't build it by testing it on real people. So I'm not saying that they're all bad, but what I am saying is when you're basing government decisions on them and you're not disclosing it, or you're doing a study and then you're going to use that study to implement a law, but that study was based on a surrogate or simulation or digital twin and nobody has been disclosed that information. And moreover, when this happens in mass, when this happens everywhere, that's when you have a problem with it. And so it is a dependency. As Kabbalist Rav Berg, who we showed you the book Nanotechnology at the beginning, warns in the book, quote, "We have become completely bound up with computers. We have become so programmed that we can't think independently and our creative abilities are paralyzed. Today, algorithms act as tertiary pretensions, automated predictive anticipations like feeds and cues that slice human attention into social atoms for corporate marketing, replacing conscious human care, SORG, with a mechanized automated loop of behavior, feedback loop." Again, there's so much that I want to cover, but they did another paper about what they called sycophantic chatbots. And sycophantic chatbots, basically, any yes man, anyone who just consistently tells you yes and what you want to hear and feeds into that loop, that feedback loop, that's all it takes to make somebody go crazy. Is that all you have to do is just put them into like a really a nice feedback loop. So why is it that people who have a lot of power, why is it that they go crazy? I don't know. Maybe it's because they have a bunch of yes men who will do anything they say, even if it's bad. Just a guess. We'll go over that at another time. Demonic operating system. Rather than a citizen holding the new orb, we're trapped inside the box. Now, it's like the doppelganger thing. It's like what happens when the doppelganger goes out and pretends to be you so well and causes all the trouble. And they like use your identity and they skirt by thinking everybody thinks that it's you. And then whenever you're back, they're gone. They're nowhere to be found. That's the idea. But in this case, it's real versus fake. Nobody knows what's real and what's fake. Is it real? Is it fake? Used to be believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. So now it's believe none of what you hear and only 2026, like 10% of what you see now. I believe 10% of what you see. As the CCRU's Kabbalistic and cybernetic analysis expose, quote, scroll a feed is to be caught in a syzygy. Your clicks produce data which the system loops back. Pandemonium is not lurking on the margins. It is an operating system of the present. It's the operating system of the present. The algorithms are not representations of reality. They are, according to the CCRU, demons acting upon it, anticipating, preempting, and redirecting human behavior. Again, that's from the CCRU, Nick Land, the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, that all of the people like Peter Thiel, their idea of Christianity is that the human body is a limiting factor. This is their belief. And they are fine with it because it can give them really good information. Yes, absolutely. PowerPoint is a great software because I could put pictures in it, I could put videos in it, I could show graphics. I'm not a truther, I'm an educator, so that's what I'll call myself. I'm an educator. Okay. This is another term out of the CCRU, Metatronics. It's interesting. Hierarchical technology attributed to the angel Metatron. And this back here is an actual diagram or occult drawing of something titled the Metatron. So that's, I guess, what they envision it to look like. The death of the territory, when the real begins tracking the model. The most terrifying realization of mirror worlds lies in the epilogue, the debate in the epilogue between the characters Florestan and Eubisus. Florestan warns, quote, couldn't it happen that instead of the mirror world tracking the real world, a subtle shift takes place and the real world starts tracking the mirror world instead? It's kind of like a haunting thing at the end. This is the exact unvarnished definition of our simulated present. We have moved from a world of physical substances to a world of digital links. We've entered Jean Baudrillard's precession of simulacra. Quote, simulation is the generation by models of a real without origin or reality, a hyper-real. The map now precedes the territory, engendering it through matrices and memory banks. A matrice, he calls it a tuple, a matrice, and memory banks. It is the real, not the map, whose vestiges now rot in the desert of the real itself. It's really well said. The romantic worldview of a chaotic, multi-sensual analog reality has been violently thrown off the train of history because it was deemed inefficient. Sights, sounds, and smells have been edited out of our existence. The modern human has retreated into the perfect, clean, neat, analytic silence of the screen. We've sacrificed our actual biological and spiritual connection to the unmanifested fields of the cosmic web, choosing instead to live as passive, positive, negative, zero dupes in a pre-recorded algorithmic loop of corporate design. And again, here is the, we looked at this at the beginning, but we'll go over it one more time. So how do they do it now? How do they do this type of thing now? Like, how does this actually manifest? First, they'll take some measurement now, and they will look forward. So the forward pass, this is time flowing naturally from a present moment, T0, to whatever end point. So maybe that's the one thing I'm not clear on, is I don't know, maybe this could be a longer time period, maybe it could be a shorter time period. It could happen on all the different levels. So maybe if you're doing it using wearable technology, this could be done in 10 to 100 milliseconds. But if you're looking at something maybe business, corporate, or something like that, it could be done over a longer period of time. Let's see. So forward generative progression, entropy increases as time goes forward, choices diverge. So from the starting point to the end point, the error is calculated at the end point, at which point recursive backward gradients calculated from the final point to the beginning, it works backwards. Again, recursive gradient does this backwards. It goes backwards from the end to the beginning, from TF to T0. Uses the chain rule to trace the causal weights. Once it figures out those causal weights, that gets enforced via reverse diffusion. Complex timelines get straightened, variance converges on collinearity. So forward pass projects the futures, and then from that point calculates the error, uses that to do a backward optimization of the weights, at which point it pushes that to enforcement. Let's see. Entropy and time with molecular communication in the FSO, or dark fiber with parallel processing, since 1991. What is FSO? I don't know what that stands for. Okay. Other honorable mentions. We went through one. There's a few others. Weights and priorities matrices to curated dataset aggregation with A2A agentic AI protocols. Yeah, we already went through this. Let's see, there's another one. Okay, yeah, so in this book right here, the Time Zones book by the Kabbalist Rabbi, he breaks it down fundamentally to, quote, the desire to receive for the self alone balanced against the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. And so it boils down to this idea of a positive and an anti. So it's like you have to, when you're searching too hard for something, sometimes when you stop searching, it comes to you. Boom. So this is another interesting book. Now, the other night, when we were looking at the video about how they say in space where it's a vacuum, that there are these things called virtual particles. So what is a virtual particle? A virtual particle, you can never see it. You can never measure it. You just have to trust that it's there. But you can never see it. And if it's not there, all of the math breaks apart. So there's an interesting short book. It's not that long. It's, I think, maybe 60 pages or something like that. It's called Sorcery as Virtual Mechanics. It's by a guy called Stephen Mace. His essay explores the intersection of subatomic physics and occult practice, proposing that magical results and synchronicities operate through a process he calls virtual mechanics. Drawing on the concept of a Feynman diagram, which I've got here, that's what it looks like. The author suggests that just as invisible virtual particles resolve energy stresses between electrons, hidden ideational forms in the unconscious can manifest as physical events when energized by human psychological tension. The text integrates the psychological theories of Carl Jung with the sigil magic of Austin Osman Spare, arguing that the deliberate repression and subsequent release of desire, which, just to say, yesterday when we did the review of the magnetism and books from 1890 or whatever, same idea as how does the odic fluid and animal magnetism, how does that work? Well, this deliberate repression of desire, he says that in that book too. Okay. The idea being the virtual particle is kind of, it only exists in so much as it has to. And he's trying to basically say that this is identical to when you're searching for something and you just can't find it. And then the second that you stop looking for it is when it pops up. That's the analogy being drawn here. Arguing that the deliberate repression and subsequent release of desire allows a sorcerer to actualize unseen forms into material reality. Ultimately, Mace, the author, provides a technical framework for understanding how intention and belief can manipulate the underlying fabric of the universe to produce seemingly a causal phenomena. So I have a little animated graphic. So basically, the idea is that this is a variance of the Feynman diagram. And here it is the other way around. And here, if people want to know more about what is this virtual photon or virtual particle, in quantum electrodynamics, the fundamental theory describing electromagnetic interactions, a virtual photon is a transient off-shell excitation of the electromagnetic field that mediates the force between charged particles, such as electrons, without being directly observable as a free particle. Unlike real photons, which are massless, on-shell quanta of light that propagate at the speed of light and satisfy the relation E equals P times C, where E is energy, P is momentum, and C is the speed of light, virtual photons violate this relation due to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, allowing them to exist briefly, just for a moment. They can pop into existence for just a moment, but you can't see them. To exist briefly with effective mass and arbitrary energy momentum values. Okay, but either way, if you go into Ken Wheeler's book, he says he dismisses the idea of the virtual photon. So it's still going to this book first, and then when you discover Ken Wheeler's book and he dismisses the virtual photon, where is it? How is it happening? Well, has to be happening through ether physics. It's an ether physics mechanism, and that's why we've been talking about it in the blood plasma video yesterday. I did videos on Ken Wheeler stuff a couple shows ago. But either way, it is kind of crazy, but I think they just don't want to admit that there's something greater than this, so they invent some type of virtual particle. Because if it doesn't exist, like if this is not a thing, then none of their equations work. None of their theory works if this virtual photon doesn't exist. And there's no way to ever measure it. And that's what they expect you to believe, basically. And then these are two other books that kind of factor into this, but not so much as the other ones. Man, I wish I could solve the Jacobian conjecture. Maybe one day. If I do, I'm going to live stream it, and I'll do a presentation just because I know you like presentations so much. Okay, let's see. This is a book called The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil in 2005. He did another one too. But they've been talking about all this stuff for a long time. Take away from this tonight from the show, since we're going to kind of do this short recap now. Everything that they're doing now with operational retrocausality, everything they're doing with pulling the data, running a simulation forwards, and then running a simulation backwards, and then reverse diffusion the error out. I can say for a fact that she's just viewing the stream. She's not a mod. I don't have any mods on my stream. Don't have absolutely any mods on my stream. So they've been talking about this since at least 1991, but as Synergy does know, we've been doing this since at least the 60s or the 70s, probably even before that, honestly. This is my personal belief, because I can't say that I could prove it to be 100% true, but everything that I've seen just in my own time doing the research, I think that this technology is older. I don't think it's new. I think it's actually been around before. I think it's not new, because the only reason computers and any technology that we know of, the only reason that it works is because all of this stuff works too. It is the basis for all computing. So they're just, it's applied at a small level to a large level, but the template's always the same. To build a computer on a silicon microboard like we're all used to, it's been around for a while, that's one type of computer, but you can build a computer out of human beings, and that's what you're going to do. And they're going to use the same principles that currently work in regular computing. Those principles will also work on higher levels because it's the basis for it all working. So yeah, there's a bunch of other books, but this book was fascinating. It was fascinating because I've even showed the one by Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End. That's what he called the book. Let's see. I'm not going to read through it, but I'll just put it up. Again, this book by Arthur C. Clarke from 1953 is a science fiction novel. Arthur C. Clarke, he was the one that said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so he wrote this book in 1953 about alien overlords. And they pretty much, during the US and Soviet Union's spacecraft orbit launch, the overlords show up, and they're going to show themselves in 50 years. So what is 50 years from 1953? Oh, wait, 2003. Okay. They don't allow themselves to be seen. They'll reveal themselves in 50 years. They're actually demons. And humankind enters a golden age of prosperity at the expense of creativity. The overlords are interested in psychic research. So it's like, what? I don't believe that they just got it right because, like, oh wow, it's a coincidence. I think they knew way more than they're putting on. Let's see. People who predicted cybernetics were all weird and new. I mean, anybody who knew them probably would have said they were weird to some degree, because anybody who's doing this type of stuff is weird. It's like you don't find normal people doing this type of stuff. But that's not anything bad, actually. That means the weird people are the ones who actually push progress forward to a big degree, because it's the weird people who can figure this stuff out. In this book, Ray Kurzweil talks about the law of accelerating returns, accelerationism. Let me go ahead and move everything out of the way. There we go. Put myself over here. There we go. Ooh. Yes, following an exponential trajectory that will culminate in a transformative event known as the Singularity. This historical turning point, represents the moment when non-biological intelligence surpasses the capacity of the human brain, allowing us to transcend our current physical and mental limitations. Source details how emerging fields, quote-unquote, emerging fields like biotechnology, nanotechnology, and robotics will all enable the humans to reprogram their own biology, eliminate disease. That's what they keep saying, but only if you, I guess, got the money for it. And eventually merge with machine intelligence to surpass the limits of the human body, to expand throughout the universe. While Kurzweil presents an optimistic, it's all optimistic, of radical life extension and enhanced cognition, he also addresses the existential risks posed by self-replicating technologies and the philosophical challenges of defining human identity in a post-biological era. Ultimately, the work serves as a comprehensive roadmap for a future where the distinction between human and machine becomes increasingly blurred. It's also on point. And then here's the second one. This one was from 2024. This text moves from a technical foundation detailing the exponential growth of computing power and the evolution of neural networks to be a philosophical inquiry into identity and subjective experience as we transition into digital substrates. Well, always interesting. Let's go ahead and see how far back they were doing this stuff. How far back was it? It's pretty far back. Got the clip here.
Are you suggesting that the New York Times is biased in its treatment of the question of Zionism, Israel's existence, the United States' relationship with the Arab world?
I will have to put all the articles of the New York Times written on this subject and draw the conclusion. You can put this to the computer and it will answer you.
What you're saying is that, yes, you do believe.
Well, let's wait for the answer of the computer.
It was 1970. And so this has been around for a long time. And that's kind of what the stream that Synergy did the other night was. That was kind of the theme of it. At least that's what I gathered. Was the main theme was math, but also that this has been around for much longer. And I mean, obviously, if you just go and look through the papers, I think you know about this, but there's a big compilation. It's like 5,000 pages, and it's got the Devil's Dictionary, about maybe 2,500 pages of white papers, and then it's got some of your stuff in there, and it's on NAB White House's website. I don't know if you know about that or not, but all you have to do is just go in there and look through the dates on the papers. And you know what? Just for the sake of it, if you don't want to look just in that book, you can look at any other papers. You just got to go dig for it, and you'll find, oh, they ran early tests with nanotechnology and PLJ nanoparticles. They did test beds in the 80s. And I was like, wait, what? That surprised me. I was like, wait, what? They were testing in the 80s? Just saying. Just saying. Okay. And so that's it, guys. That's going to wrap it up tonight, I think. Let me go ahead and go back over here and we'll sum it up with one more look at this chart. We'll go through this one more time. Also, I guess I didn't show this. You might also hear the term back propagation. You have forward propagation, but then there's also back propagation. In machine learning, the chain rule of calculus is used during back propagation to compute how changes in each weight affect the final error. Let's see. Dr. Whitehouse is a lovely man. He wrote that with our full blessing. He's a very wise soul. I absolutely agree. Here, let's put his website up. Okay. anab-whitehouse.com. And that'll get you to his website. That's who Synergy's talking about. And he's done so much amazing stuff. So if you just go to his website and you scroll down, you'll see these right here. And you can download all of these. This kind of looks new. I don't know if I've seen that one yet. He's got that one. That one. The one that I'm referring to is this one here. The Synergist Guide. Might take a bit. This thing's a big file, so it might take a minute to load. Everybody can access this on the website too. I'll put all the links and stuff in the post whenever I post it. But Phase 1, forward propagation. Present state measured to some final state. So a starting point and an end point. What it does is it takes data right now and it projects to that future point. What's going to happen by that future point, or basically that future point when you will no longer be able to have reliable predictions. That's a kind of, how do you determine what the final point is? Past this point, you can't say for sure anymore. So it projects the future state, and then once that goes into the terminal layer, here, feeds the projected state into the terminal layer, and it compares that to constraints, target baseline, ideal sovereign coordinates, gated ledger constraints, and it subtracts the projected state from the target. So it's how wrong, how off, how much error is there. That's the global error. Now this is very useful because that error can be used with gradient descent, stepping back in time in reverse order to figure out how to cure those errors in real time. So how does it do that? Well, steps back in time, looks at how that error that it calculated affects you at each step backwards, and then once it knows the weights, it can use previous token prediction. So it can say, what prompt do I put in to get them to not do those errors? So basically, a pre-image would be, what does the person need to look like at the starting point for them to not make the errors? And it does that by stepping backwards and then using previous token prediction. And then it feeds that back into the environment, the physical actuator interface. It uses the background noise, the background biological variances, acoustic or somatic noise, and it takes the error corrections and it puts it through reverse diffusion, or a stochastic denoising sequence, an iterative step of denoising. You're going in steps and you're trying to say, okay, at this step, what can I do to get the error reduced? Okay, now take another step back. What do I do to get the error reduced? How does it know what to do? Well, it uses previous token prediction. Okay, from there, denoise and flatten the curve through temporal latency straightening, biological behavior realignment, linearized compliance. As Synergy pointed out, compliance matrix is genomic. And that feeds it back into the beginning to a new state, capturing a new state. And so. And yes, absolutely. This pretty much is happening at every level imaginable, because that's what you have to do. For this to work optimal, like for this to work the way that they want it to work, this has to be implemented at every level in the speed. Literally, the cognitive twin is useless if they can't get it updated every 10 milliseconds. So it's like that's some serious bottleneck, and that was a big bottleneck for a long time. But if you guys want to know more about that, see the predictive markets video that I did a couple days ago, about a week ago. So I think that's it, guys. I think we're going to close it out there. So hope everybody enjoyed. Please leave questions, comments, concerns. Hit the like button if you haven't already. I appreciate everybody for stopping in, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good night.